I knew shit was going sideways when I saw the font. Calibri, size 11, bold red text in an email subject line that screamed urgent, alignment sync. In my world, the world where we build the communication backbones that keep drones from falling out of the sky and special forces teams from talking to static, nothing is urgent unless things are literally exploding. But to Brad, I knew project director who looked like he was assembled in a factory that manufactures disappointment and teeth whitening strips, everything was urgent. I've been in this game for 22 years. I started when cables were thick, servers were loud, and the smell of ozone was the only perfume a woman in engineering needed. I've survived budget cuts that gutted entire departments, commanding officers who thought cloud computing involved actual weather, and 3 separate government shutdowns where I worked for IOUs in spite. I am Sandra. I am the lead systems engineer, and I am tired. Look, before I tell you how I dismantled this man's career with the precision of a laser-guided munition, take a second to hit that subscribe button and smash the like, all right? It helps the algorithm find the other burnt-out cogs in the machine, and frankly, it validates my rage. Thanks. Now, let's talk about the specific hell of corporate nepotism. Brad was the son-in-law of a senator. He had an MBA that was probably printed on the back of a cereal box and a handshake that felt like grabbing a dead fish. He had been in charge for 3 weeks. In those 3 weeks, he had used the phrase paradigm shift 42 times. I counted. I keep a tally on a sticky note under my keyboard, right next to the panic button I wish was wired to an ejector seat. Issue wasn't just that Brad was incompetent, it was that he was loudly incompetent. He treated the classified workspace like a frat house with better security clearance. But I didn't care about Brad, not really. I cared about one thing, the calendar. For the past 4 months, there had been a block on my Outlook calendar that was immovable. It was color-coded in Do Not Disturb gray. It was titled simply 25th Anniversary 000, 25 years. Do you know how hard it is to stay married for a quarter of a century when you and your husband have both spent time in conflict zones? My husband, Mark, is a retired heavy transport pilot. We have spent more anniversaries on Skype with a 3-second delay than we have in the same zip code. We survived the deployment where he lost an engine over the Hindu Kush. We survived the year I lived in a shipping container in a location I still can't legally name. We survived miscarriages, empty nest syndrome, and that one year Mark decided to brew his own beer, and the garage smelled like yeast and regret for 6 months. This year was supposed to be the victory lap. We had booked a cabin in the Smokies. No Wi-Fi, no cell service within 3 miles, just a hot tub, a bottle of 18-year-old scotch, and the silence of the woods. I had prepped for this leave like I was prepping for a tactical withdrawal. I had uploaded every schematic to the secure server. I had written documentation so detailed a golden retriever could have run the system diagnostics. I had briefed my second-in-command, a sharp kid named David who actually respected the hardware. I was bulletproof, or so I thought. It was Friday afternoon, 1600 hours. The office was winding down. The low hum of the server room next door was vibrating through the floor, a comforting sound, like a purring cat made of silicon and electricity. I was clearing off my desk, shredding the daily scratchpad notes when Brad's shadow fell across my cubicle. He didn't knock on the partition, he just loomed. He was wearing a suit that was too blue, a shade that didn't exist in nature, and his cologne smelled like desperate ambition and Axe body spray. Sandra, hey, rock star, he said. He actually did finger guns. I stared at his fingers, imagining snapping them. Brad, I said, not looking up from my shredder. The machine gnawed on a piece of paper with a satisfying ZZZZZT. So quick pivot, he started, leaning against the flimsy wall of my cube, making the whole structure groan. The slide deck for the Tuesday brief with the Pentagon liaison? I need to add some sizzle. Can you rerun the latency simulations? I want the numbers to pop. I stopped shredding. I turned my chair slowly. The mechanism squeaked. A sound of rusted protest that matched my soul. Brad, I said, my voice level, the voice I used when explaining to a general why he couldn't stream Netflix over a secure tactical link. I am out of office starting at 1700 today. I am gone for a week. The simulations are done, they are accurate. Physics does not pop, it just is. He laughed. It was a hollow, wet sound. I know, big anniversary, congrats. But hey, we're a team, right? One team. One fight? I just need you to tweak the data visualization. Maybe make the bars green instead of gray, and extrapolate the Q3 projections. That is falsifying data, Brad, I said, and I am leaving. David has the files. If you want green bars, David can make them green. I am going to the mountains. He blinked, his smile faltering just a fraction. It was the look of a man who had never been told no by a woman over 40. Well, sure, David is great, but you're the lead technician. I feel better if you have eyes on it. Engineer, I corrected him. I am the lead systems engineer, not a technician, and my eyes will be on a mountain range, not a PowerPoint. I stood up. I picked up my bag. It was a battered tactical messenger bag I'd had since 2008. It had a stain on the strap from hydraulic fluid and another one from cheap commissary coffee. I slung it over my shoulder. I laid it all out in the handover email. Brad, it's in your inbox. Read it. Don't call me. I walked past him. I could feel his eyes boring into my back. It wasn't the look of a leader. It was the look of a petulant child who had just been told he couldn't have ice cream for dinner. We all make sacrifices, Sandra, he called out after me. His voice carried across the bullpen. Heads popped up from cubicles, young analysts, tired coders, the janitor who knew more secrets than the president. That's what the mission is about. Sacrifice. I didn't turn around. I walked to the security checkpoint, badged out, and listened for the heavy clunk of the magnetic lock engaging. That sound usually meant freedom. But as I walked to my car that had seen more miles than the space shuttle, I had a prickle on the back of my neck. That old instinct. The one that tells you the silence before the mortar hits isn't peaceful, it's holding its breath. I got in, threw my bag on the passenger seat, and cranked the engine. The radio blared a country song about trucks and beer, simplistic and honest. I gripped the steering wheel. He's going to call, I whispered to the dashboard. The little bastard is going to call. I checked my phone. 17:05, no missed calls. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe the ghost of my cynicism was haunting me. I put the phone in the cup holder, backed out, and headed toward the highway. Mark was waiting at home with the bags packed. We had a 4-hour drive to the cabin. I told myself it was over. I told myself the work was done. But deep down, I knew men like Brad. They don't see people, they see resources. And when a resource goes offline, they don't respect the downtime. They just kick the machine until it starts working again. I merged onto the interstate, the sun setting in a bruised purple sky over the valley. Try me, Brad, I muttered. Ash flickering in the wind. Just try me. Little did I know he wouldn't just try me. He was about to declare war on the wrong veteran. The drive to the mountains is a decompression chamber. That's how Mark and I have always treated it. The first hour is usually silence, just the hum of the tires on the asphalt and the wind rushing past the mirrors. It's the shedding of the skin. He sheds the flight schedules and the FAA regulations. I shed the server logs and the bureaucratic idiocy. By the second hour, we start to talk. By the third, we're human beings again. We were deep in the Appalachians, winding through a pass where the trees leaned in over the road like old men sharing secrets. It was pitch black outside, the kind of darkness you only get when you're miles away from a city. The headlights cut a tunnel through the night, illuminating flashes of guardrails and rock faces. Mark was driving. He had one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the center console, close to mine. He looked good. Older, grayer, with those deep lines around his eyes that came from squinting into the sun at 30,000 feet, but good. He seemed lighter. So, he said, his voice low over the soft classic rock playing on the radio. Did you bring the good stuff, or are we drinking the swill you got in the Christmas raffle? I chuckled, a genuine sound that felt rusty coming out of my throat. I brought the Macallan, Mark. I'm not a savage, and I packed those cigars you like. The ones that smell like burning leather and victory. That's my girl, he smiled. He squeezed my hand. 25 years, Sandy. Can you believe we didn't kill each other? There were close calls, I said, looking out the window at the abyss of the forest. Remember the Fort Hood housing assignment? The one with the mold? I remember you threatening the base commander with a lawsuit. He laughed. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise of kinetic legal action. We were happy. In that moment, the office was a million miles away. Brad was a bad dream. The world was just us, the truck, and the road. Then the center console vibrated. It wasn't a polite buzz. It was an angry, sustained vibration that rattled the plastic cup holder. My phone screen lit up, casting a harsh, sickly blue light into the warm cabin of the truck. I stared at it. The number wasn't saved, but the area code was local. 9:47 p.m. Who's calling you this late? Mark asked, his eyes flickering from the road to the phone. Is it one of the kids? No, I said, feeling a cold knot form in my stomach. Kids have their own ringtone. This is unknown. I should have let it go to voicemail. That's what a sane person would do. But in my line of work, late-night calls usually mean a server farm has melted down or encryption key has been compromised. Instinct to fix things overrides the instinct to protect yourself. I picked it up. This is Sandra. You're not answering your email. The voice was tinny, loud, and unmistakable. It was Brad, and he was screaming. I felt the blood drain from my face. Brad, how did you get this number? This is my personal cell. HR has it on file for emergencies, and this is an emergency. The background noise on his end was loud, music, clinking glasses. He wasn't even at the office. He was at a bar. I'm looking at the slide deck, Sandra. The fonts are all wrong. The transitions are clunky. It looks like shit. I closed my eyes. I took a breath that shuddered in my chest. Brad, I am on leave. I am currently driving through a mountain pass. The slide deck is standard military protocol. Times New Roman, no transitions. It's a briefing, not a circus act. I don't care what the protocol is, he shouted. I could hear him slurring slightly. S in protocol was wet. I told you I wanted it to pop. I need you to log in right now. Pull over, find Wi-Fi, fix it. I have a vision for this presentation and you are sabotaging it with your laziness. Mark's hand tightened on the steering wheel. He could hear the shouting through the phone. His jaw set hard. Laziness? I repeated, my voice dropping to a whisper that was far more dangerous than his shouting. Brad, I worked 60-hour weeks for the last month to prep this system. I uploaded everything. It is done. It's done when I say it's done. Brad roared, I am the project director, you are the help. Now get your laptop out, find a Starbucks or whatever hillbillies have out there and fix the damn slides. I don't care if it's your anniversary, I don't care if it's your funeral. When I call, you answer, do you hear me? The silence in the truck was deafening. Mark looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of fury and concern. He slowed the truck down, ready to pull over if I needed to explode. But I didn't explode, something else happened. A switch flipped. It was the same switch that flips when you realize the person screaming at you isn't a threat, they're a target. Brad, I said. My voice was completely flat, void of emotion. You called my personal number. At 21:47 on a Friday, while I am on approved annual leave. Discuss font choices. I'm discussing your future employment, he yelled. Do it now or don't bother coming back on Monday. I looked at Mark. I looked at the dark road ahead. I thought about the general I used to report to, the one who taught me that loyalty goes both ways. Okay, I said. Okay, so you're doing it? Brad sounded triumphant, smug. No, I said. I mean okay as in, I understand exactly where we stand. What the hell does that mean? Sandra. I pressed the red button. The call ended. The blue light faded. The cabin returned to darkness. I stared at the phone for a second, then tossed it into the back seat. It landed on a pile of coats. Sandy? Mark asked quietly. I stared straight ahead. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. I felt a cold, crystalline clarity. Keep driving, I said. Don't stop. Is everything okay? No, I said. It's not okay. He just signed his own death warrant. Just doesn't know it yet. I wasn't crying. I was smiling. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of an engineer who just identified a critical structural weakness and knows exactly where to place the demolition charge. Mark, I said, remember General Harlan? Mark glanced at me, surprised. 3-star Harlan, the one who sent us that wedding gift, the cryptic one? Yeah, I said. The one who told me if I ever needed a nuclear option to call him. Or not tonight, I said, settling back into the seat. Tonight we drink scotch. Monday we burn Rome. The weekend was surreal. We were in this beautiful cabin, surrounded by ancient pines and the smell of wood smoke, but a part of my brain was still in that truck, replaying the call. Mark tried to distract me. He made pancakes. We hiked a trail that led to a waterfall. We drank the Macallan. But every time I looked at the fire, I didn't see logs burning. I saw Brad's career. I didn't turn my phone on for 48 hours. That was the discipline. You don't fire a weapon until you have a target lock, and you don't engage the enemy while you're emotional. You wait. You let them make mistakes. And oh, did he make mistakes. On Sunday night, the night before we were supposed to drive back, we cut the trip short by a day. The mood was tainted, despite our best efforts. I finally retrieved my phone from the backseat of the truck. I sat on the porch swing, wrapped in a quilt, and powered it up. It buzzed for 3 solid minutes. A frantic seizure of notifications. 17 missed calls from Brad, 12 voicemails, 5 emails to my personal account, which was a violation of security protocol, so severe it could get your clearance revoked just for trying. But the most interesting message wasn't from Brad. It was a text from David, second in command. David is a good kid. He thinks hacking is what they do in movies, but he knows his way around a Linux kernel. David, son 1430, Sandra, I don't know what's happening. Brad is spiraling. He CC'd the Pentagon liaison on an email about your insubordination. He told them the delay in the visuals was your fault. He's trying to throw you under the bus before the meeting even starts. I stared at the screen. The night air was cold, but I felt hot. Brad wasn't just being a jerk, he was lying to the client, and not just any client. The Pentagon liaison was Colonel Iron Mike Patterson, a man who chewed glass for breakfast and hated excuses. Brad had made a fatal calculation error. He assumed that because I was a contractor, I was disposable. He assumed that because he was the director, he held the keys. He didn't know that 15 years ago, before I was a systems engineer, I was the lead comms specialist for a task force in the desert. He didn't know that the man who commanded that task force was now Lieutenant General J. Harlan, the director of Defense Information Systems. And he definitely didn't know that General Harlan owed me. Big time. I won't go into details, some things stay off Reddit and out of the history books, but let's just say there was a night involving a satellite uplink, a sandstorm, and a very critical message that absolutely had to go through to extraction teams. I made it go through. The general never forgot. I opened my contacts. I scrolled past Mom, past Pizza Hut, down to a contact just labeled JH, direct. I didn't call. Generals don't like calls on Sunday nights. I sent a file. I forwarded the voicemail Brad had left me. The one where he screamed, slurred his words, admitted to being drunk, I'm at the bar, and threatened to fire a protected veteran employee for not working on her anniversary. I added a simple text, Sir, hate to bother you. This is the new project director for the Ares Link contract. He is harassing me on my 25th anniversary leave. He is also CCing your Colonel Patterson with lies about system readiness. I am handling it, but I thought you should hear the leadership style we are dealing with. Sandra. I hit send. I watched the little swoosh icon disappear. I looked out at the dark woods. I figured I'd hear back on Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. Generals are busy people. They have wars to run and budgets to argue over. The phone buzzed in my hand 26 minutes later. JH, direct, happy anniversary, Sandra, disregard the noise. I'll handle the debris field. See you Tuesday at 0900. I think a site visit is in order. I read it twice. I'll handle the debris field. A chill went down my spine, not of fear but of anticipation. It was the feeling of hearing the distant rumble of close air support when you're pinned down. Mark walked out onto the porch holding 2 mugs of coffee. He saw the look on my face. The phone was glowing against my cheek. What happened? He asked, handing me a mug. We're going back tomorrow morning, I said, taking a sip. The coffee was black and bitter, just how I liked it. Is it bad? For me? No, I said, looking up at the moon. For Brad, it's an extinction event. I played Brad's voicemail one last time just to hear the slur in his voice. I don't care if it's your funeral. You know, I told Mark he was right about one thing. What's that? It is a funeral. I stood up and tossed the dregs of my coffee into the bushes. But it's sure as hell not mine. Monday morning, our defense contractor office has a specific smell. It smells of stale floor wax, dry clean suits, and the collective existential dread of 100 people realizing the weekend is over. I wasn't there, obviously. I was currently driving back from the mountains, listening to a podcast about serial killers, which felt thematically appropriate. But I know exactly what happened. David filled me in later over beers, his eyes still wide with the trauma of witnessing a train wreck in slow motion. At 08:30 sharp, Brad called an all-hands stand-up. Now, stand-ups are agile terminology meant for software teams to quickly sync. Brad used them as a pulpit. He stood in the center of the bullpen, wearing a fresh suit, gray this time, with a pink tie that looked like a tongue. He was holding a venti coffee from Starbucks, the cup sweating onto the carpet. Okay team, listen up, he barked. He had that manic energy of a man who knows he's screwed up but thinks if he just moves fast enough, no one will notice. Big week. Huge week, we have the Pentagon brief tomorrow. He looked around the room. The team was a mix of gray-bearded engineers who had written code for the Voyager probes and young cybersecurity whiz kids who wore hoodies. They all looked at their shoes. Where's Sandra? Brad asked loudly. He knew where I was. Everyone knew where I was. She's on leave, Brad, David said quietly from the back. Brad scoffed. He actually scoffed. Right, leave. Well, let this be a lesson in dedication. While some people are disconnecting, the rest of us are here driving the mission. I need everyone to step up. We are going to redo the data visualization. A murmur went through the room. Brad, a senior analyst named Helen, spoke up. Helen is 60. She knits during code compiles. She takes zero shit. The data is locked. Sandra signed off on the checksums. If we change the visuals now, we have to re-verify the entire dataset. That takes 3 days. We don't have 3 days, Helen. Brad snapped. We have 24 hours. Just make it look better, make it dynamic. I want the generals to feel the data. Feel the data? Helen repeated, lowering her knitting needles. It's latency metrics, Brad. It's not a poem. Just do it. Brad spun around, spilling a drop of coffee. And David, I want you to audit Sandra's files. I want to see if there are any gaps. I have a feeling our lead engineer has been coasting on reputation. The room went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the vending machine in the break room. To suggest I was coasting was heresy. To suggest it to the people I had trained was suicide. David stiffened. Sandra is the best engineer in this state, Brad. Her files are impeccable. We'll see, Brad sneered. Access her drive. I want a report by noon. He walked back to his office, slamming the door. Blinds on his window were crooked. According to David, the rest of the day was a study in psychological warfare. Brad paced his office, making loud phone calls. He kept coming out to ask if the green bars were ready. He sent an email to the entire department, subject, accountability, which was just a paragraph of buzzwords about trimming the fat. He was panicked. He knew he had CC'd the colonel on a lie. He knew he hadn't heard back from me. He was trying to build a paper trail to justify firing me before I could return. He was trying to frame me for delay he was causing. At 14:00, he made his biggest mistake. He called IT security. I want Sandra's badge deactivated, he told the security chief, a massive guy named Tony who was an ex-Marine. Tony looked at him. On whose authority? She's a Tier 1 asset. I need a sign-off from the site lead or higher. I am the site lead, Brad shouted. Technically, you're the project director, Tony said slowly. The site lead is currently in DC, and higher means the client. Just do it. Brad slammed his hand on the desk. She is a security risk. She refused a direct order during a crisis. Tony didn't blink. I'll look into it. Tony did not look into it. Tony texted me. Tony, security. Your boy is trying to kill your badge. I told him the system is lagging. You good? I was at a rest stop in West Virginia when I got the text. I replied, me, hold the line, Tony. Cavalry arrives tomorrow at 0900. Tony, roger that. Popcorn is in the microwave. Monday ended with Brad sending a finalized deck to the Pentagon. He had forced David to change the graphs. They were now bright neon green. The axes were mislabeled because in his rush, Brad had deleted a column of reference data. He sent it with a note, here is the updated presentation. Please disregard previous versions sent by unauthorized staff. We have corrected the errors found in Miss Mitchell's work. He hit send. He packed up his bag. He probably thought he had won. He thought he had controlled the narrative. He went home to his wife, the senator's daughter, and probably bragged about how he was cleaning house. He didn't know that at that exact moment, in a secure facility in Maryland, General Harlan was reading that email, and he wasn't looking at the neon green bars. He was looking at the timestamp, and he was picking up a phone. Tuesday morning dawned clear and cold, a perfect day for an execution. I pulled into the parking lot at 0845. I didn't park in my usual spot. I parked in the back near the loading dock. I wasn't going inside yet. My instructions from the general were clear: wait for the signal. I sat in my truck, sipping a coffee that actually tasted like coffee and not rest stop sludge. I watched the front entrance through my windshield. Staff were trickling in, heads down, shoulders hunched. The morale in the building was so low it was practically subterranean. David walked in, looking like he hadn't slept. Helen walked in, carrying her knitting bag like a weapon. Then Brad arrived. He drove a leased BMW. He parked in the spot marked reserved for director. He got out, adjusted his suit jacket, and strode toward the door. He looked confident. He probably thought today was his big moment, the day he dazzled the Pentagon with his neon green charts. He walked inside. At 0858, the atmosphere shifted. You know how birds stop singing right before an earthquake? It was like that. 3 black Chevrolet Suburbans turned into the office park entrance. They weren't moving fast. Were moving with the predatory grace of sharks entering a swimming pool. They had government plates, tinted windows, extra antennas bristling from the roofs. They didn't park in the visitor spots. They pulled right up to the curb directly in front of the glass double doors, blocking the fire lane. The driver's door of the lead SUV opened. A soldier in dress greens stepped out. He scanned the perimeter. Then he opened the back door. Lieutenant General J. Harlan stepped out. He was a tall man, lean as a whip, with a face carved out of granite. He was wearing his class A uniform. 3 stars gleamed on his shoulders in the morning sun. A rack of ribbons on his chest told a story of 30 years of conflict. He was flanked by 2 other men in suits, military legal counsel. JAG officers, sharks in pinstripes. I rolled down my window just to hear the silence. There was no sound in the parking lot. Guy walking his dog on the sidewalk stopped and stared. The general didn't look left or right. He walked straight toward the doors. Inside the lobby, as Tony later recounted, the receptionist, a sweet girl named Sarah, nearly swallowed her gum. She reached for the phone to call Brad, but the general was already at the desk. "Good morning," the general said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "I believe you have a Mr. Bradley Stevens in charge?" "Why, yes, sir," Sarah stammered. Do you have an appointment?" The general smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. "I am the client, ma'am. The client always has an appointment." He didn't wait for a badge. He walked past the turnstiles. Tony, who was manning the security station, stood up and snapped a salute so sharp it could have cut glass. Sir Tony barked. "At ease, Marine," Harlan said, nodding at him. "Show me to the director's office." Tony stepped out from behind the desk. "With pleasure, sir." "Follow me." I watched them disappear into the building. I checked my watch. 0902. Inside, Brad was likely reviewing his slides, practicing his synergy speech in the mirror. He had no idea that the roof was about to cave in. My phone buzzed. It was a text from the general. "JH. Direct, come in, Sandra. Use the front door, head held high." I put the truck in park. I grabbed my bag. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. No makeup. Hair in a messy bun, eyes tired but sharp. I looked like me. I walked across the parking lot. The black subs were idling, their engines purring with menace. The driver of the lead car nodded at me as I passed. I nodded back. I walked through the lobby. Sarah was still staring at the door where the general had vanished. "Sandra," she whispered. "Do you know who that is?" "Yeah, Sarah," I said, swiping my badge. It beeped green. Tony hadn't deactivated it. "That's the customer service department." I walked down the hallway toward the executive suite. The office was dead silent. Every head was popped up over the cubicle walls, looking toward the glass-walled office at the end of the hall. Brad's office. The blinds were open. I could see Brad behind his desk. He was standing up. He looked small. Standing in front of his desk was the general. The 2 JAG lawyers were flanking him, opening briefcases. Brad caught sight of me walking down the hall. His eyes went wide. He pointed a shaking finger at me, mouthing something to the general. The general didn't turn around. He just placed a small silver device on Brad's desk. It looked like a voice recorder. I reached the door. I didn't knock. I pushed it open and stepped inside. "Ah, Sandra," General Harlan said, turning to me. His face softened just a fraction. "Right on time, General," I said, standing at attention out of habit. Brad looked between us. He was sweating, visibly sweating. You know her? Know her?" The general looked at Brad like he was a smudge on a lens. "Mr. Stevens, Sandra Mitchell built the network you are currently using to send me unauthorized emails. Now please sit down. We have some audio to review." The office smelled of Brad's cheap cologne and sudden, acrid fear. Brad sat down. He didn't sit like an executive. He collapsed like a folding chair. He looked at the recorder on the desk, then at the 2 lawyers who were arranging documents with terrifying precision. I don't understand," Brad stammered. "General, I was just preparing the briefing." "The slide deck, we're not here about the slides, son," General Harlan said. He pulled up a chair and sat down opposite Brad. He didn't lean back. He sat with the posture of a statue. "We're here about the personnel clause in the Defense Appropriations Act, specifically the protection of key assets." He reached out and pressed play on the recorder. The voice that filled the room was loud, distorted, and undeniably Brad's. I don't care if it's your anniversary. I don't care if it's your funeral. When I call, you answered. You hear me? Brad went pale, translucent actually. He looked at me. I was leaning against the door frame, arms crossed, face blank. The recording continued. I'm discussing your future employment. Do it now or don't bother coming back on Monday. The general let the silence hang in the air after the recording stopped. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. Mr. Stevens, the general said softly. Do you know what a Tier 1 contractor is? She's just an engineer, Brad squeaked. Sandra Mitchell, the general said, gesturing to me without looking, holds a top-secret/PSY clearance. She is the signatory authority for the encryption protocols used by the 101st Airborne. Harassing her? That's bad. Threatening to terminate her for refusing to violate security protocols by working on an unsecured network while on leave? The general leaned forward. That is a federal offense. It's coercion. And since you threatened her employment while she was exercising protected benefits, well, JAG officers tell me it's also a violation of the labor standards outlined in your company's contract with the DoD. One of the lawyers pushed a piece of paper across the desk. Section 4, Paragraph C, Hostile Work Environment Regarding Essential Personnel. Brad stared at the paper. His hands were shaking so bad he couldn't pick it up. I was just trying to motivate the team. It was a joke, a figure of speech. A joke, the general repeated. He looked at me. Sandra, were you laughing? No, sir, I said calmly. I was driving a vehicle on a mountain pass while being screamed at. Right, the general said. He stood up. The meeting was over. It hadn't even lasted 5 minutes. Mr. Stevens, as of 0900 this morning, the Department of Defense is exercising its right to immediate termination of the management clause for this facility. We are pulling the contract from your division. Brad stood up, knocking his chair over. You can't do that. This is a $400 million contract. You can't just pull it because of a phone call. Watch me, the general said. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. You harassed my lead engineer. You lied to my liaison. And you compromised operational security by demanding work on an unsecured line. The contract isn't just pulled, son. It's incinerated. But my father-in-law, Senator, I know who your father-in-law is, the general said, stepping closer to the desk. The air temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees, and I will be having a very long, very detailed conversation with him about who he recommends for these positions. I imagine he won't be pleased to learn his son-in-law cost the state 300 jobs. Brad looked like he was going to vomit. 300? He whispered. Shut it all down, the general said to the lawyers. Freeze the servers. Revoke all badges. Move the project to the backup facility in Virginia until this company can prove it has competent leadership. He turned to me. Sandra, you're still on leave. Go back to your cabin. We'll reactivate your clearance when we've scrubbed the toxicity out of this building. Thank you, sir, I said. The general looked at Brad one last time. Brad was staring at the wall, eyes glazed. You screamed at a ghost, Mr. Stevens, the general said. You thought she was just a woman in a cubicle. You didn't realize she was the structural integrity of this entire operation. You broke the load-bearing wall. Now the roof falls on you. The general walked out. The lawyers started packing up Brad's laptop evidence now. I looked at Brad. I wanted to say something witty. I wanted to give him a savage one-liner, but honestly, he looked so pathetic, so small in his tailored suit that I just felt tired. The font was fine, Brad, I said quietly. I turned and walked out. As I walked down the hallway, the murmur of the office had turned into a roar. Phones were ringing. People were standing up. The JAG officers were already moving toward the server room. I walked past David's cubicle. He looked at me with wide eyes. Did he just? David pointed at the generals retreating back. Yeah, I said. Pack your stuff, Dave. Paid vacation for a week while they sort this out. What about Brad? Brad is going to need a new job, I said, and probably a good lawyer. I walked out into the sunshine. The general was waiting by his SUV. He didn't wave, he just tapped the brim of his cover. I nodded. I got in my truck. My hands were finally shaking. Adrenaline, the crash after the high. I called Mark. It's done, I said. Is he dead? Mark asked. Professionally? Vaporized. Good, Mark said. Come home, I'll pour the scotch. We spent 3 more days at the cabin. The company was in freefall, the contract was frozen, and the senator's office was apparently in crisis mode, but I was sitting in a hot tub watching a hawk circle a thermal. It was the best vacation of my life. When I finally turned my work phone back on, it nearly exploded. 93 emails, 47 voicemails. The tone shift was incredible. It was a masterclass in corporate backpedaling. The first dozen emails were from Brad, sent in the hours after the general left. They ranged from pleading, Sandra, please, we can fix this, to bargaining, I can get you a raise, just call the general, to pathetic, my wife is going to kill me. I deleted them without opening. Then came the emails from HR. The director of human resources, a woman named Linda, who had previously ignored my complaints about the AC being broken for 2 years, was suddenly my best friend. Dear Sandra, we are conducting an internal review regarding the recent management conflict. We would value your input. Please know that the company values your tenure and expertise above all else. Values my tenure. Right, they valued the fact that I was the only person who could turn the lights back on. Then there were the messages from the team. David, Helen, Tony. David, holy shit. The senator issued a statement distancing himself from the company. Brad is gone, scrubbed from the website. They're saying he resigned for personal reasons. Helen, I'm knitting a scarf for the general. What are his colors? Tony, Brad tried to get back in the building to get his personal effects. I told him he wasn't on the list, best moment of my career. I scrolled through the wreckage. It was satisfying, yes, but it was also exhausting. I had built this department. I had hired these people. Watching it paralyzed because one man had an ego problem wasn't a victory, it was a waste. I sat at my kitchen table, drinking tea. Mark was unpacking the bags. You going back? He asked. I have to, I said. Someone has to clean up the mess. The general won't keep the contract pulled forever. He just wanted to make a point. The soldiers still need the comms link. You could retire, Mark said. We have the savings. I know, I said, but not like this. I don't leave on a loss, and I don't leave because of a Brad. I opened a new email draft. Recipient, JH, Direct, General. Thank you for the intervention. The point has been made. My team is innocent in this, they just want to work. If you reactivate the contract, I will personally ensure the deliverables are met by Friday. No green bars, just data. Sandra, I hit send. 10 minutes later, a reply. Contract reactivation authorized pending leadership change. I've suggested to the board that they look internally for the new director. Perhaps someone with engineer in their title. See you on the high ground, Sandra. I stared at the screen. Director, me? I laughed, a dry, rasping laugh. What's funny? Mark asked. The general wants me to run the place, I said, and I'd rather eat broken glass than deal with the budget meetings, I said. But at least I wouldn't call people on their anniversaries. I looked at the sent folder. Brad's emails were still there, unread in the trash. I emptied the trash. Felt like flushing a toilet. The next day, Wednesday, I drove back to the office. The parking lot was full. The black subs were gone. The reserved spot for the director was empty. I walked in. Sarah, the receptionist, stood up. Welcome back, Sandra. She beamed. She looked genuinely happy. HR left a packet on your desk, and everyone is waiting in the conference room. Waiting for what? I asked. For you, she said. David said we don't start until Sandra says we start. I felt a lump in my throat. This was the difference. Brad commanded. I led. I walked down the hall. The air felt lighter. The smell of fear was gone, replaced by the smell of brewing coffee and ozone. I walked into the conference room. The entire team was there. They stopped talking when I entered. All right, I said, dropping my bag on the table. Vacation's over. We have a Pentagon brief to fix. Helen, verify the checksums. David, change the graphs back to gray. Tony, unlock the server room. You got it, boss, David said. And for the first time in 3 weeks, I didn't hate that word. Brad didn't go quietly. I wasn't there for the main event that happened on Tuesday with the general, but the final purge happened on Thursday. I was in the middle of a code review with David when we heard shouting in the lobby. I have personal property in there, my ergonomic chair, my frame degree. It was Brad. He was trying to get past Tony. I stood up. Keep coding, I told David. I walked out to the lobby. Brad was wearing jeans and a polo shirt. He looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. He was red-faced, arguing with Tony. Sir, you are barred from the premises, Tony was saying, his arms crossed. I can mail you your box. I want to talk to Sandra. Brad yelled. He spotted me down the hall. Sandra, you did this. You poisoned the well. I walked up to the turnstiles. I stayed on the secure side. There was a layer of bulletproof glass between us. It felt symbolic. I didn't do anything, Brad, I said. You did this. You prioritized your ego over the mission. You tried to bully a system that is designed to chew up bullies. I'm going to sue, he spat. Wrongful termination, defamation. Go ahead, I said. Discovery will be fun. The general has the recordings and the emails and the logs of you trying to delete data. He froze. What logs? The ones David recovered. I lied. David hadn't recovered anything yet, but Brad didn't know that. Digital footprints are forever, Brad. He slumped. The fight went out of him. He looked at the logo on the wall, the company he thought would be his stepping stone to a Senate seat. I just wanted to make an impact, he whispered. You did, I said. You united the entire staff against you. That's rare. Goodbye, Brad. Tony, I nodded to the big Marine. Escort him off the property. If he comes back, call the local PD. Yes, ma'am, Tony grinned. I watched Brad walk to his car, no longer the BMW, but a rental sedan. He drove away. The office rumors were wild. Some people said I was CIA, some said I was a secret agent for the Inspector General. Later that afternoon, a young intern named Chloe came to my desk. She was holding a file. Miss Mitchell, she asked timidly. Just Sandra, Chloe, Sandra. I heard stories about the general. People talk, I said, typing away. Did you really work with Spec Ops in Kandahar? Like in the field, I stopped typing. I looked at the framed photo on my desk. It wasn't of me and Mark. It was a picture of a group of dusty, tired soldiers standing in front of a satellite dish in the middle of a desert. I was the only woman in the photo. I was holding a wrench. It was a long time ago, Chloe, I said. Different life. Is that why the general came? The general came, I said, looking her in the eye, because in this business, competence is the only currency that matters. You can have the best suit, the best degree, the best connections. But if you can't keep the link up when the mortar rounds start falling, you are nothing. I pointed to her file. Is that the latency report? Yes, ma'am. Is it accurate? Checked it 3 times. Good, I smiled. Then you're worth 10 Brads, get to work. She smiled back, standing a little taller. Culture had changed. The fear was gone. We were a team again. We were tired, we were overworked, and the coffee was still terrible, but we were a team. On Friday, the board of directors announced the interim leadership. They didn't pick me, thank God. They picked Helen. Helen, the knitter. Her first act as director was to ban mandatory stand-up meetings and replace the coffee machine. I approved. 2 weeks later, a FedEx package arrived addressed to Bradley Stevens. Sarah brought it to my desk. He's not here, obviously. Should I return to sender? I looked at the return address. Department of Defense Office of the Inspector General. No, I said, open it. It might be legal paperwork for the contract. Sarah slit the tape. She pulled out a single sheet of heavy, cream-colored paper and a small velvet box. She read the letter. Her eyes went wide. Oh my God, she whispered. It's a debarment notice. I took the letter. It was formal, cold, and final. It stated that due to gross negligence and security violations, Bradley Stevens was hereby permanently debarred from holding any position involving federal contracts. He wasn't just fired, he was blacklisted. He could never work for a defense contractor, a government agency, or even a janitorial service that cleaned a federal building ever again. His career in this sector was dead, buried, concrete poured over the grave. What's in the box? I asked. Sarah opened the velvet box. Inside was a coin, a heavy brass challenge coin, but it wasn't a commemorative coin. On one side, it had the DoD seal. On the other side, it had a picture of a donkey, a jackass, and a sticky note attached to it for your collection. Jen, I laughed until my sides hurt. It was petty, it was childish, it was perfect. What do I do with it? Sarah asked, trying not to giggle. Put the letter in the file, I said. Send the coin to Brad's house. He earned it. I went back to my desk. I sat down. The office was humming. The servers were green. The green bars were gone, replaced by boring, accurate gray data. I opened my drawer. In the back, tucked behind a box of staples, was my own collection of challenge coins. I pulled one out. It was old, scratched, and heavy. It was from the task force. The one I got from Harlan 15 years ago in the sand. It didn't have a donkey on it. It had a wolf, silent service, it read. I placed it on my desk. I looked at the phone. It was quiet. No screaming, no demands, no sizzle. My cell phone buzzed, not the work phone. My personal one, it was Mark. Hey, he said, I was thinking, since we cut the trip short, how about we try again next weekend? No mountains this time. Maybe the beach sounds good, I said. Wi-Fi is spotty there too. Is the world going to end if you leave? I looked around the office. David was laughing with Chloe. Helen was knitting during a conference call. Tony was eating a donut. No, I said, the world is fine, the system is stable. Good, love you, Sandy, love you too. I hung up. I looked at the screen. A new email popped up. From Jen J. Harlan, subject, new project, eyes only Sandra. We have a situation in the Pacific. Communications array is acting up. Need a consult. You available? I smiled. I took a sip of my coffee. I picked up the wolf coin and flipped it in the air. It caught the light, spinning, a flash of gold in the fluorescent hum of the office. I caught it. I typed my reply, I'm available, sir. Sending diagnostics now. I never raised my voice. I never made a scene. I just did my job. Brad was a ghost. I was the machine. And the machine always wins. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.